I gave my son's dad 80% custody and he lasted 10 days, filed an ex parte to get it back to 50-50, even though he had dragged me to court asking for primary custody. I gave my—
You guys, if you're ever wondering what it feels like to have kids with a narcissist, especially when you guys are no longer together, you need to watch this woman's video. You see, when you have kids with a narcissist, they always want to fight you, fight the children with you, with everything that they have. They'll make sure they go through every corners of the world to fight those children with you and want to have the full custody and all of that. It's not like they're good parents, though. It's not like they can take care of the children. No. It's not as if they are good. No, or you are the bad person. Maybe you're the bad person, you're a drug addict or something. No. They just want to see you suffer. And it's even worse once they see that you have another partner. They will make sure they just want to see you suffer. And in fact, when they even know that you don't have money, it's even worse. And they have money more than you, it's worse. You guys, let's watch this video together. Then we'll come back and discuss.
My son's dad 80% custody and he lasted 10 days, filed an ex parte to get it back to 50-50, even though he had dragged me to court asking for primary custody. And I know a lot of you are thinking, she's family court strategist, she should have figured this out. But when it's your own case, it's really hard to navigate, especially when you don't have anybody on your side. You don't have your own strategist. You don't have a coach, you don't have a family, and you don't have a lawyer. And you're also raising other kids by yourself. The other two kids I have sole custody of. So let's get into my case so you can actually see what happens and see me more of a human versus somebody who's just got this platform and like a social media influencer, whatever. So I'm just going to give you the general dates of things that had happened so you can see how we got here. And you all can come up with your own conclusions. I met this man when I was 15 or 16 and he was not a minor. You can do with that information as you will. I have him under oath admitting to that. And this man was persistent, we'll say, for over 10 years. So I didn't start dating him in a monogamous relationship with him until I was in my late 20s. By then, I had already had a child from a previous relationship and I had sole custody of her. And he actually knew the dad. So I started dating this man in 2015. My mom had passed away in 2014. As soon as I start dating this man, I can't talk to my family. I have to have my phone transferred to his phone line. Literally all the classic things that we've all heard. About a few months into it, I start having weird feelings and I want to break up with him, even though he had convinced me to move in. So I start having a conversation about wanting to break up. I end up pregnant. You know how that goes. So I go through all these things. We're going to keep it all short, but probably a lot of the same things a lot of you have gone through. I start therapy from home because I'm not allowed to leave the house to do therapy, and he takes his lunch breaks to sit at home and listen to my therapy sessions, even though my therapist had said, don't do that. Let her do her therapy. He wouldn't listen. He also refused to allow me to break up with him. Whole long thing, but even my therapist got involved and said, like, you need to break up with her. You need to let her move out. Like, you gotta let her go, and he wouldn't. So I have a conversation with my dad and I say, I want to break up with him. I think that there's some things going on. At this time, I still wasn't registering that it was abuse. 2 weeks later, my dad starts coughing up blood and my dad was rushed to ER. We didn't know he had cancer and he got diagnosed with terminal thyroid cancer and given 45 days to live. I had decided at this point, I need to put leaving the abusive relationship on hold and I need to be my dad's hospice nurse because I only have 45 days left, possibly, with my last surviving parent. I go to my dad's house, which is like 10 minutes away. I start caring for my dad while my ex, or now ex, is hacking my social media and messaging other men saying I'm cheating on him, calling me all kinds of names, and like claiming that he is in a relationship with me. Keep that in your mind. So things start happening. My dad passes away. I end up filing a temporary restraining order. I moved 4 hours away. Now, at that point, I was, I guess, invisible homelessness is what some people would mark it as, but I didn't have stable housing. I just had to go somewhere where there was a roof over my head, so I wasn't sleeping in my car or going back to my ex. He knew that I was moving away. It was in the temporary restraining order, the custody, and where I would live. And I also had a conversation face-to-face with him. So I moved 4 hours away, and as I come back to this county to have my hearing for a restraining order, about 2 months later, this man serves me with his own. Says all kinds of things, but again, I didn't live here. I didn't really talk to him. I had been gone for months. Anyways, I had to get a lawyer out of my deceased father's bank account, right? My dad was freshly buried, and I had to go in his bank account as a beneficiary and get the money in order to obtain a lawyer because the judge would not listen to my case without a lawyer. I got a lawyer, and that lawyer basically told me to do whatever dad wanted. And if I gave him 50-50, he would stop. So I did. And we ended up having a agreement signed in 2019. Now, mind you, from November of 2018 to January of 2019, this man had coerced me into moving back and said we could co-parent. If you move back, we can work together. We'll just drop everything. We'll move forward, whatever. And I believed him. I moved back. He wanted us to be in some counseling thing. I agreed. I thought it would kind of like smooth over everything. He had begged me back. I did not want to be with this man. He tried to take me on trips, be back with his family, who also tried to be listed as a witness to take my son away. And I had refused. I started the counseling, and then I realized, oh, he wants me back in a relationship. I don't want to be in a relationship with him. And I stopped the counseling because I don't want to be in a relationship with him. November of 2019, so almost a year later, I started a new relationship because in my mind, I thought that was the only thing that I could do. Mind you, I knew this man since I was like 18 or 19. So by this point, it had been over 10 to 15 years since I had met the man that moved into my house, and I ended up pregnant that week. I know this is all twisted when you're in the situation. I honestly only got in that relationship because I thought getting another man would get the other one out of my way, leaving me alone. He would finally get it that I'm moving on. I thought it would also help with rent, and I thought I knew this person. Clearly, I was not fully healed. I admit that. I admit wrong choice, okay? Now, this made my son's dad amp up everything. Now, I don't know if it has to do with the man who moved in was black or other things. You decide. A few months into that relationship, that man had threatened to unalive me, unalive my kids, stop paying rent, cheating on me, and involved with every illegal activity that you can think of. I even called the police. They did nothing. So anyways, I got to a point of filing a restraining order. I told my son's dad, hey, can you keep our son? I'm going to go stay at a hotel until I can get this man out of the apartment. He kept our son. He knew what was going on, like just vaguely what was going on. I filed a restraining order against the man who lived with me, granted a temporary restraining order, and 2 weeks later, we had the pandemic shutdown. I had reached out to my son's dad saying, look, we don't know what's going on, right? We all thought this was like the end of the world. And I said, we got to figure out how to co-parent. We got to figure out how to get along. How can we work together? Yada, yada, right? This is in our text. It's kind of like he decided, no, I'm not going to do that. He used every opportunity to threaten court, threaten to take my child away, all kinds of stuff. Then he decided to ask me when I was due with this child. I told him about the week of, we never know when we're going to give birth. And he decided the week before to go to court and file sole custody. So about July of 2020, as I already had my restraining order hearing against the man I was just with and pregnant by and about to give birth to our child, my son's dad decided, I'm going to go tell the court that she is abusing substances, she's an abuser, she has mental health issues, literally everything he could say to try and obtain sole custody. I was never served with any of this, ever. I was never served with any of this. I got a call from the courthouse saying, you have mediation in like a week. And I was like, which dad? Please let me know. And he couldn't, but he could tell me the lawyer's name, which I knew was my son's dad. I rushed to hire any lawyer I could. And that lawyer also told me, basically give him whatever he wanted. We can stop the sole custody part, but anything else that he wants, you should give it to him. And I did. I then found out that he was moving or already sold his house and bought a $700,000 house, even though he claimed he had no money. Throughout the next several years, he bought multiple cars. So he has 4 cars now. He went on several vacations. He has gone everywhere, done everything, you name it. He's done it. All while I'm on government assistance, raising 3 kids total, absolutely by myself, with no partner, no family, no support. I hired another lawyer, and that lawyer took his deposition. That lawyer did discovery. That lawyer was working very hard for me, but that was about $50,000. We never saw trial. It went from a week on, week off schedule to I had Monday, Tuesday, Dad had Wednesday, Thursday, and we rotated weekends. Dad was still pushing forward on sole custody though, so we still had court. All while he was making unilateral decisions. There was a lot of medical issues. There was a lot of other things that he was not following and the way that he was speaking to me. So I was kind of pushing back on this saying, you know what, maybe I should have sole custody. And his lawyer was trying to drop everything. I got a job opportunity and was going to move back to Southern California and said, you know what, you can have 80% custody. I'll have 20%. Let's just screw court, sign this, whatever. And he did. That was March of 2023, and the primary custody was supposed to start in June. because that's when my other kids were ending school, and that was going to align with my lease ending and all of that. He had June 8th to June 18th, and then it would start my 20%, and then he would have the school year. He would also be able to unilaterally enroll him in anything and all of that. Now, during this time, I also filed another restraining order because the police told me to. Because when I went and reported other things that had happened, they told me to. Now, the detective that I met with deleted the intake interview, told me that I was lying about everything, and said I was just using it to get my kid back, which was not true. The case that was supposed to go to the DA, poof, went missing in transit, and they refused to send it again. And Detective Elizabeth Place decided to tell me that it was too much work for her to look through all the evidence that I finally gave her, so she just didn't do it. About June 27th, 2023, I got an email from his attorney saying, "You need to give your child back today or we're going to charge you with sanctions." What the f? And they took me back to court saying that we needed to go back to 50-50, and the judge actually told me that I was manipulative by following the 80-20. Even though we had gone through court this many years because he wanted the primary custody. So we're still going through it today. Yesterday, I publicly posted about my story about how I willingly gave my son's dad 80% custody, and he lasted 10 days before taking me back to court to enforce 50-50 on an emergency filing, even though he dragged me through court because he wanted sole custody from the 50-50. If you would have told me prior to having a child with that man that literally anyone can go into court and call women unstable, unhealthy, hysterical, shame postpartum depression, come up with a magical diagnosis of whatever, I honestly probably wouldn't have believed you. Let's do a little recap of all the things that I have been called and labeled without any proof. Anytime I spoke up against the treatment that I was enduring in that relationship, whether to him, any sign of it on social media, to anybody, that man would then come up with a magical diagnosis. Oh, you have postpartum depression. Oh, you have anxiety. It's the coffee you're drinking. You need to go to a professional. And I would go to my doctor because, hey, I'm supposed to trust my partner, right? And the doctor actually told me, yeah, I don't think you actually have anxiety. I think it's him and his mom. And I kept trying to break up with this man while also trying to save myself. I was seeing a therapist while in that relationship and never diagnosed with anything. That was until I left him, and then I was diagnosed with PTSD. After I filed a restraining order to get out of the relationship and make him leave me alone and stop all the hacking and stalking, he waited several months and then filed one back and then convinced me to drop mine and then begged me back for several months. Now, if his stance was actually clear that I was the abuser, or I was unstable, or I had whatever mental health disorder, why would this man beg me back? Why would this man plan trips with me? But then it continues. I talked again about the abuse on every declaration that I've ever completed. So while he was begging me back, he wanted me to go to this counselor who has a doctorate, right? Not actually a doctor who can diagnose anybody with anything, but he put on his legal documents that I'm diagnosed with paranoia psychosis because apparently I was in this psychosis and I made up all the abuse. Again, the person that we were seeing was a counselor because he was begging me back, happened to have her doctorate, which, mind you, my dad has his doctorate. Again, you can't just go out and diagnose people when that's not actually the field that you have your doctorate in. And it wasn't even a clinical setting. Again, I've been called pretty much everything in the book. And then it makes you question, well, if all those things were true, of everything he said, why would you file an emergency filing to take me back to court to enforce 50-50? Wouldn't you stand 10 toes down and say, yeah, she's unsafe, she shouldn't have the kid? I don't know. I still owe over $30,000 from my ex taking me to court for the custody that he actually didn't even want. From January of 2019 to July of 2020, we had week on, week off, right? 50-50 schedule. He decided in July that he was going to file for primary custody. He said things like I had mental health disorders, I was an addict, and I had an abuser living in my house. I didn't have the mental health disorders that he claimed, and he had no proof of that. I wasn't an addict. I was pregnant at the time. No doctor had ever stated that they were concerned, any signs of anything. I never had CPS at my childbirth because they would have been there and taken my kid away. There was literally no proof of that. And the abuser that he was talking about, he came into my house and saw that he wasn't living there. And I also texted him months prior to that I had a restraining order and he wasn't living there. Anyways, this gets dragged out for years. My ex cashed $100,000 out of his pension. He hid money with his new wife. He had multiple vehicles. They bought a $700,000 house and he was still claiming that he didn't have any money. My lawyer said that we could ask for attorney fees, which we did. Now this was put off for a while, and right before the hearing for attorney fees, the law firm dropped me and said, well, because you can't afford it, we can't represent you. Yeah, that was the whole point of the hearing for attorney fees. So they had to wait for the result of the attorney fees hearing to then essentially rehire me. So at that hearing, the judge basically said, because I was on government assistance and my ex was not, I got help and he didn't, which if you've been on government assistance, it's not very much money. My ex was making $27 an hour, had all this stuff, made excuses like he didn't have to report a vehicle because the transmission was out, even though he technically still owned it and had assets, and had a bunch of investments and stuff. And I'm going to tell you, I ignored that bill. I ignored that bill because I was like, how the fuck am I going to come up with this money? I don't have this kind of money. I don't have this kind of money. I don't know where I'm going to get it from. And eventually they had to threaten to take me to small claims court. And I'm slowly making payments off of that. Now, why do I have to make payments on that when 10 days after my ex actually got the primary custody, because I willingly gave it to him, did he turn around and say, no, I want 50-50? What was the point of court? So now we're back to the same order that we had prior to him taking me to court in 2020. But now I'm stuck with thousands of dollars in debt.
Do you know the crazy part of it? She's not the only one going through this whole thing. When I went to comment section of that video, a lot of women that have dated narcissists, that are currently with a narcissist, everybody have it. So a story to share. And it's just like, Ashley said, my husband filed for emergency custody. He said I was mentally unstable and a danger to the kids. His motion was over 100 pages long. He submitted videos, his motion was denied, and the judge's response didn't favor him. So then his lawyer reached out and said he wanted to come to an agreement on custody. Narcissists are insane. My ex is dragging me to court 2 months after our son drowned. After he dropped him off with a friend, had the court force me to give him to him on weekends and took him for 24 hours on one time and decided taking care of him was too hard. He wants full custody and legal, and then he wants me to have visitation every single day except 2 weekends a month. Ali said, oh, okay, so they all do this. My ex kept telling me he wanted 50-50, and we currently have 80-20. And primarily, and we both got new jobs, so I offered him 60-40. He said no and stopped getting our son for half of this current time for the last 2 months. Now, all of a sudden, he wants 50-50 and doesn't have a consistent work schedule. Zero help, and he works out of state for 2 weeks. My ex did this to me, always about hurting me, never about the kids. Those kids are 24 and 21 now. The 24-year-old sees it. The 21-year-old still behaves or believes his dad. Mine only started custody when he got into a relationship with somebody who could take care of his child. Frankie said, my ex hasn't spoken to our child in over 5 years. When I found out he moved out of state, I messaged him asking to sign away his rights, and he freaked out. Called me and screamed, cursing, spam called me 48 times in a row when I was in labor, made threats, all that. He hasn't tried to contact us since, and it's been a year and a half. For anyone working with a NACS, document. Was able to save my child from years of being brainwashed by a NAC parent is thriving. I really love to hear your thoughts about this video down in the comment section. Can you share your thoughts respectfully in the comment section? And thank you all so much for tuning in and another interesting video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in my next one. Kisses.